Hello, everybody. We are sitting here today as part of a special initiative from C4DISC. My name is Nia Ricci. I am a publisher at Wiley, but I'm here today in my capacity as the co-chair of the Communications and Outreach Committee for C4DISC. If you are not familiar with C4DISC, it's the Coalition for Diversity and Inclusion in Scholarly Communications. May is the Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in the US. And as part of that celebration, C4DISC is spending time this month with API colleagues in our industry who's doing great work related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I've been meeting with a lot of amazing people throughout the week, and this interview is very special to me. This one is the last one that I'm doing, and it is with my colleagues at Wiley. So I'm sitting here today with my wonderful and colleagues and good friends, Toni Chow and Jinnie Kim. Thank you both for being here. It's kind of funny because we're all very close friends. And I'll mention in the beginning that both Toni, Jinnie, and I are co-chairs and co-founders of Wiley's first Asian and Pacific Islander Employee Resource Group. And that's why I'm talking to them today. So with that, I will ask Toni first to introduce yourself. Toni?
Hi, thank you for Mia for inviting me and including me in this. I'm really excited. My name is Toni Chow, and I'm the Global Employee Experience Lead at Wiley, and have been here for 26 years tomorrow, and have worked with a lot of leadership, a lot of wonderful people. So thank you.
Thank you, Toni. Jinnie?
Jinnie Kim, publisher with Wiley. I've been with Wiley since 2008, and so I'm also a long timer. I manage a primarily society portfolio in cell and molecular biology at Wiley.
Great, thanks, Jinnie. Just for anyone that's watching this, I have my child running around in the hallway. So if you hear noises, that's what it is. This is remote working. So we will ask you, now thank you for introducing yourselves. We'll now go to the 5 questions that I've been asking the wonderful people I've been interviewing this week. So Jinnie, I will start with you with the first question, and then Toni for you to answer next. So Jinnie, what brought you to the scholarly communications industry, and what do you love most about your job?
To be honest, I just kind of fell into it. You know, after school, I sort of had thoughts about grad school, but wasn't quite ready. And so I thought, I love books, I love reading, I love science. And so I just kind of fell into it. What do I love the most about what I do? I think just the proximity to science. I believe in the power of science. I believe that science moves us forward, and you know, it's a hugely important vehicle for progression and improvement, you know, to people's lives. And so the fact that I have a hand in that is really, really meaningful to me. So
that is wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Toni, over to you.
Yes, so I actually came from a law firm background so about 10 years I've been working with law firms. And what was exciting about Wiley was that the work that we do have tangible outcomes for so many people, education, research, everything that is important, like Jinnie said, for progression and empowering people, science, you know, these are things that never gets old, never gets stale. There is always something new to learn. What I love most about Wiley is people, and a lot of people have heard me say this and probably sick of me saying this, but the amount of time that I've been here and the number of people that I've gotten to meet and learn from and grow, the different perspective, it's just been phenomenal. And, you know, I say 26 years, but it feels like a blink of an eye. So.
That's wonderful. I share that, and I've heard Jinnie said that too. It's the people that really, you know, makes a difference on how you feel. Thank you both. My next question, I'm going to go to you first, Toni. You know, you're Asian, so you're working in this industry. What do you hope to see for the Asian and Pacific Islander community working in this industry? You could talk about why you're involved in the ERG or your job as an engagement lead. Yeah.
So you know, I think as a nation American, we've got kind of a conflict of growing up here and with our own heritage and our own cultural restrictions or biases, and then trying to fit in. And so what I see is needed, and there's so many brilliant API people, and we cover about 48 countries. So there's a lot of us. And we're just not seeing enough of us in those leadership roles, in those at the table to make decisions. And sometimes I feel like we have made progress, but even being invited to the table, I don't know that we have the same voice. And I think it's so important to be respected, to be seen, to be heard, because we cover a lot of ground in the world, and we have a lot of things that we can contribute to. So, and I think it's important when you think about science and the impact that we have, when you have that number of people to contribute, I think that will really help propel us forward. So
beautiful. Thank you, Toni. Jinnie?
Well, I have to echo that. I mean, I very much believe that we can do better when it comes to diversity, and really sort of trying to empower sort of higher level participation of minorities in this industry. You know, since I've been doing this for over 20 years now, I've seen quite a bit of progress, but it still feels like there's a lot more to do. And again, as Toni said, just having a seat at the table doesn't mean that you have equal voice. And I think that's where we could do a better job. And so through our ERG, actually at Wiley, one of the missions that we've been really focused on is to try to really advance the cause of API colleagues in the upper ranks of management. Because I think, you know, there's no, you know, glass ceiling there per se, but perception can also, you know, play an important role in sort of perhaps discouraging colleagues, or they feel that there's not a clear path because, you know, we don't have mentors who could perhaps show us what that would look like. And so, you know, that's one of the things that we've been working on, and we hope to really sort of, you know, make some good progress and kind of laying that kind of that path for ourselves as well as the colleagues across the world at Wiley, because I think there's a lot more to be done.
Great. That's great, Jinnie. Thank you. And I will add, you know, as your co-chair, I'm like blurring the line of the interviewer at the moment. But, you know, I agree with all of that. And, you know, also particularly for our industry, I think we have a responsibility, right, to make impact where we can. And, you know, taking back to like our roles as science disseminator and helping science and scientists and researchers, you know, out there, you know, there is so much amazing, impactful science and research being done by Asian and Pacific Islander researchers, but they are not being elevated or recognized as much as the others. There's just not enough out there. And we have a place as the publishers, you know, of this knowledge, and if there's more of us working in this, and we could help raise the profile of API researchers around the world and the research that's being done and help influence in that part. So, okay, great. Well, thank you for answering that question. Question number 3. May is Asian, as I mentioned earlier, May is API Heritage Month in the US. You know, I would love to ask you first, Jinnie, what does your, you know, Asian heritage mean to you?
Yeah, it's as a former history major at
school,
I thought I knew history, but the history that I know is really Western history. And I think that, you know, for the longest time, I didn't realize that the history that we all kind of are taught and sort of live, you know, live with is sort of really one-sided. And I think that when we celebrate through, you know, these kinds of, you know, recognition. You know, I think it's important for us to kind of take stock of like who we are as people. It gives us almost an excuse to like look inward to see what have we done together, what is our history here, and so it's given me on a personal level kind of a chance to like sort of understand and learn more about like our history here. And I don't think that's talked about enough. And so I do think that it's an opportunity for us all to sort of think about how we came to be in this country and what has been our contribution, and just talking about it, because I do think that there's this start of like celebrating, you know, our contribution and who we are, and there's so much diversity also within the Asian, you know, community, that like we get sort of lumped together as just kind of one. And I think this is really a good opportunity for us to just talk openly about who we are, what we do, and that's really important. So
agreed. That's beautiful. Yeah, Toni, over to you.
Yes, I would echo Jinnie, that our history is not, you know, elevated enough and talked about enough. And so our contribution is unseen, it's invisible. And that's a shame, because we have so many talented Asian Pacific Islanders in research, in science, in education, in technology, innovation, like covering the spectrum. Groundbreaking, and yet they're not. When you go Google like the top 10 whatever, you rarely see that diversity population included, and that's a shame. And I think part of that is that our narrative is being controlled by others, and we kind of have to take that back. So I'm actually an English major. I love literature. I love reading, and what I love reading is that learning through storytelling, what has happened and the reason why and the context around that time. So that really brings that to life, and then we can see where we came from and where do we have to go and what do we need to get there. So that to me is really important.
Thank you both. I completely agree. You know, that reminds me of just the recent survey that came out that was done by the Asian Americans to Unite for Change. That was really shocking in the results when they've asked in the US, it was almost 3,000, I think, US residents, if they can name a single prominent Asian American. And the answer was like 42% are not able to answer this question. And that was shocking to me. So I agree. I think our stories need to be told. We need to learn, you know, and it's not just non-Asian Americans, it's our community as well. And as Jinnie said, you know, we learn about each other and talk about these stories and learn about, you know, our history and how do we going to move together as a community, and history is a big part of it. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, 2 more questions. As part of this celebration, I'll start with you, Toni. If you can share your favorite API movies or books and what you like about them, and then we'll go to Jinnie.
So I love books, as I mentioned, but I have to tell you, when I think about API pop culture in America, it's not that easy to find. But I have to say 2 movies that really resonated with me. The first one was The Wedding Banquet by Ang Lee back in the early 90s. To see a movie that was not stereotypical, that was almost all Asian casting by an Asian director, talking about really taboo subjects, and including the heritage and the traditions of Chinese wedding and homosexuality, and you know, all that. It was really, that blew my mind. So that was one of them. The other movie that has made an impact on me, and I love, is the 100-Foot Journey. And that was a movie about Indian immigrants to France. And so he's a chef, and, you know, we understand that French cuisine is like one of the highest, you know, respected. And literally the 100-foot is between where the Indian family is and the Michelin star restaurant. But it could have been a cultural divide because the dynamic was so different. And, you know, the way that you cook, the smell, the spices, the ingredients, the way that you interact as a family, there was so much to it. And I find that story powerful because it wasn't in the US. That immigrant story happens everywhere. Yeah. And learning about each other and how to adapt and how to find commonalities is a global phenomenon. So that to me was one of the, those two movies really have left an impression on me.
Thank you, Toni. I've seen both movies and I agree with everything that you said. They're really wonderful movies. Jinnie, over to you.
I shamefully do not have time to read many books, and so I'm gonna go out and recommend movies, and I'm gonna state the obvious because these movies have won many accolades and awards, but I feel that sometimes, you know, things get watered down for kind of the broader, you know, Western audience, and I love movies that really kind of tell the story as they are, you know, and it just, they are instantly relatable and authentic because it's something that you see from your own family life, from your parents, grandparents, etc. And kind of the dichotomy that exists between I guess the haves and have-nots that sometimes I think get sort of you know, washed out, and so, you know, Parasite, I think, you know, if you haven't seen it, it's just amazingly, you know, sharp and precise kind of a picture of how the people who have it and people who don't, and how they intersect, but not necessarily relate to each other, and how, you know, people, you know, across the world, I suppose, you know, you see that. And I just thought the movie captured what's wrong with many of the ills, you know, that we see in our society. I think it was really great. I also loved another Korean movie, Burning. It's really sort of, even though the main theme is something different, I don't want to give it away, but it again depicts, you know, sort of the struggles of the have-nots, you know, and how so many people struggle to be heard and to have visibility in you know, across the world, and it just, I love that doesn't get sort of like, you know, brushed aside, and so those two movies I really recommend. And I also loved Farewell, which came out last year, and again, it, you know, it really shows how Asian families relate to each other, the closeness, and how, you know, across generations, you just have this such, you know, loving closeness, and yeah. So I think all three movies, certainly, I imagine many of us have seen it, but if you haven't, please do.
Great, thank you, Jinnie. Those are great suggestions. I've seen Parasite, but not the other two. I will make sure to have all these recommendations included on the C4DISC website when this is published. Last question, I'll go to you, Toni. Can you recommend an organization to support?
So I would say in the current climate, I would recommend the Asian American Journalists Association. I think it's important to have journalists helping to raise the story of API community. And not only be the communication or reporting on, but owning the seat of what gets told, what gets broadcast, what gets included in the news as important news items, so that then everybody else can come along and you know, report on that. So I think it's such an important time for us.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely. Jinnie?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more about AAJA. I especially in light of, you know, what's been going on the last 2 years, I just feel like news is not news. You know, I think we used to think of news as something very like, you just state the facts, but actually facts sometimes get muddled, and, you know, we hear a lot of falsehoods all over media, right? And so, and sometimes, as Toni said, important stories get lost or they're told inaccurately or incompletely. And so having our perspective represented by journalists, you know, in mainstream and also other media, I think are so important. So absolutely support that organization. And then another organization that I think is so great is called AAPI, Women Lead. It's an organization that empower AAPI women and girls through events like conferences and to foster women leadership and power. And you know, as a mother of a little girl, I hope to think that the world that she will, you know, enter as a grown woman would be different, better. And I think organizations like this really serve a great function to help do that. So.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Wow. Okay. Well, we are at the end of our time. I am going just to thank you both so much for taking the time. You know, our community, this is the last of this interview series that I'm doing for C4DISC this month. And there are so many wonderful API colleagues, you know, working in our industry. And I'm so glad I get to sit with a group of you, inspiring people and feeling really, you know, despite during difficult times, particularly for our community, you know, with the Asian hate that's going on and the harrowing times our families and friends in India are going through, that we be able to take this minutes to celebrate our heritage in this month is really wonderful. So thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording now.
Okay.